What is up? It is Saturday morning. I'm real sick. I mean, it's not that bad, but my sinuses are absolutely brutal. I'm coughing a ton. I've had a cold like this in a long time where I have like a scratchy throat. But I really didn't sleep, which sucks. That's the worst part about getting sick now. That person's coming pretty quick. Oops. Yeah, I'm not commuting to work, which is nice, but it's about 8 in the morning. My wife is helping host an event, and she needed something dropped off. I guess there's an Amazon delivery, and she needed, I have no idea what it is, but she messaged me and she said, "Hey, are you awake?" I'm like, "Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like I haven't slept, but I'm awake." So it's about a 20-minute drive there and 20-minute drive back, so I figured we can get a conversation in, kind of chat about what I'm building. I think one of the last videos I was talking about the things I'm interested in getting built, sort of like selfishly in Brand Ghost. There's a couple of, I was talking about, like, I don't know what a good word is to call them, like listeners, or like being able to listen to either RSS feeds or like webhooks for stuff getting posted, like a YouTube video being uploaded or a blog post going up, and then being able to hook into that somehow, and then kind of add relevant content to topic streams. And the example of that is, like, if I upload a podcast to Spotify, I want to have my Spotify topic stream updated to handle that. So, or my blog posts. I'm not writing blog posts currently just because I'm coding a lot more, but I have a topic stream that's for that. And I don't yet have a YouTube topic stream, but I really should. Like, why don't I have that? And it's just because the amount of YouTube videos I upload. And if I were blogging at the same rate I was putting out a blog post almost every day. And that would be a pain in the butt to go manually add that into a topic stream. So that's what I want to go build selfishly, because that's sort of the evolution of Brand Ghost for my use, is that plus this aggregated social feed that we've been talking about doing, just so I spend less time on social media, right? So these are things that I want. Now, what's really cool is that we actually have people that are using the platform, which is good, but it means I have to prioritize, like, what I'm focused on. So as we've been kind of building stuff, there's been a lot more like testing and production, which I'm not even a huge fan of doing, but some of the stuff that we have to do with some of the social media integrations, especially with like OAuth, is like we don't have a choice but to be using an app that's running on a hosted domain, because they have callbacks that need to be running on things that aren't just localhost. So some of them work for localhost, like they don't care, and others really care that you have a domain. So no, that doesn't mean you have to use production, but you need to be hosting somewhere. And just to keep things simplified, like, there's been a lot of stuff we've been able to get away with, especially with a few users, just to be able to kind of run in prod. But we're already like leaving that territory. So now that we have people using it, and people who are like keen on usability and like for feature requests or like small bugs and stuff in the UX, like there's people that are paying attention. So like we have to shift gears immediately, right? It's interesting just kind of going. It's not like it was a prototype before, but certainly some aspects of the user interface, like prototype is too strong of a word on one end of the spectrum, but like we're like, hey, we got to get it working, we got to get it functional so people can try it. And now that they are, great, we can immediately start incorporating that feedback and do something about it. So it really is like shifting gears to a different level. So that's what we've been doing with the UI, but the reality is the back end, so which is where I spend most of my time, like that's no exception now. And it sort of has been for a little while, because I spend a lot of my time in the back end. There's features. This Tesla driver is ridiculous. No signaling. Was like tailgating. He's just trying to pass and being an idiot. Anyway, whatever. Some people suck. It's too early for me to get pissed off. Is it? But yeah, the back end in particular is no exception, because the database. And when you don't have, so like to kind of frame, oh man, this cop is flying through, he's gonna go through this red light. Oh yeah, what's going on? What's going on? Get out of his way. When you have these users that are onboarding, but they're not using the platform, there's not a whole lot in the database that they're using. Oh, I shouldn't cough on the mic. I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm going to do about that. Not cough, I guess. So it hasn't been that big of an issue, because someone's like onboarding, like they're getting registered. Like there's a couple tables. I'm like, hey, don't touch those, Nick, because you're going to mess something up. But there's other tables where I'm like, they don't have content that's going out. Like I can mess around with this stuff to a certain degree and like have a lot of confidence that things are okay. But now people are putting a bunch of content in, and I'm like, that's not okay. So now it's time to go invest way more heavily into like testing infrastructure. So it's kind of funny, because if you think about it, we're now getting a lot of feedback, which is super cool. This is exactly what we need. So how do we execute on that, but also make our testing infrastructure more robust? And these things kind of seem like they're counterproductive, right? Because you might be saying, well, okay, if you don't have like automated tests, and you don't have like a test database, or you don't have whatever infrastructure, like you have to go build that. That takes time. And if you're doing that and that's taking time, what about the features you're supposed to be delivering? But the good news is, I think like we've been in this space, like we're all really big on automated tests. We've spent a lot of time like championing test automation, different types of coded tests, different ways you can approach that. Like basically stop looking at testing like it's a barrier, and if you don't have the infrastructure for testing, or your code's not set up in a way to test, like basically stop making excuses for it and start looking for the solutions, right? Like, oh, I couldn't add tests to this because they would be complicated and take a long time to run, and like we don't have anything for that. And it's like, well, okay, like you have options. Like if you think that's the best way to get the coverage, like that'll give you the most confidence, go spend time building the thing, run it once a week, run it nightly, like do something. Or maybe it's because your code's set up in a way that doesn't let you test well. Sorry, it's pretty bad. And so we've spent a long time doing this kind of thing together, and so we're no strangers to it. So like over the past couple days, as we've been kind of having this realization, especially because some of the feature requests, I'm like, from the back end side, I'm like, I think I know how that would need to work. And like, I need to change the database schema to make it work. I'm thinking like, I'm nervous to go touch the database, right? And this is like a good, it sounds kind of funny, but it's like a good indicator for where and why you need to test. Because there's been a lot of stuff we've been doing where I'm like, I'm not nervous. I can go touch that and I have full confidence. At least full confidence it's not going to break something else. That's what I should clarify. I'm not full confidence my code's going to work the first time. But if I'm testing out a feature, like validating it, trying to see if it works, I can be very confident I'm not going to break other things. But some of these things coming up now, I'm like, I don't have that confidence, and we cannot risk derailing other users. So that's a good sign to me about where I need to invest in my testing coverage and the style of test that I want to write. So in this case, it's very similar to what I had going on with Meal Coach. And Meal Coach had a lot of complexity in the data layer because of how we were trying to like generate meal plans, right? So we need to be able to pull things and do a lot of like math to get macronutrients to fit. So if you didn't normalize things properly, you'd get like weird results. Like it might work, like the queries run, but your results are all weird. Like it would be like, go eat like, 20 kilograms of chicken, and you're like, that seems like not a good recipe. And in this case, it's a couple of things. It's not like math, but scheduling. And the other thing is, we have some things like users can change records. So if you add content, you're allowed to change it. So we have operations that are like, they can be destructive. And that makes me very nervous, because if I've messed up a query, if I've messed up a where condition, like that can mess things up. So as we're building more of these features, I'm going, okay, look, like I need to be sure that these work and not have regressions or anything like that. So the database in particular for me is one area that needs like a lot of love and coverage. So I had some patterns that I really liked with Meal Coach, and we used Testcontainers for basically spinning up Docker containers for our dependencies. And in Meal Coach we had MongoDB in MySQL. Why people always ask me, but when this comes up and I see a lot of people are like, oh, definitely I use Postgres for everything. I'm like, I don't know why, but I just happen to use MySQL like as a default. I don't think I have a good reason. It's always just kind of worked, and I'm familiar with it, but I don't know, maybe Postgres makes more sense. That's a future conversation. But in this case, we only have MySQL. We don't have MongoDB as well, like with Meal Coach. And I had like using xUnit and Testcontainers, able to get functional tests set up really fast. Now, the one thing that I never had working that I really need to sort out is that when you're running tests in Visual Studio with xUnit and you run them in parallel, it does something weird. Like they're in different app domains, I think is what's happening. And if that sounds like it's weird and you don't understand what I'm saying, the problem I'm trying to solve is that in order to save on resources, because when I had thousands of tests running in parallel, per test class is the level of parallelization, okay? Or level of concurrency, I don't know how you would say this. So within a test class, everything will run sequentially, but across test classes, the classes will run in parallel. And because there were enough tests, it meant that it would try to go spin up like hundreds of Docker containers. And then it would use all the resources on my computer. And then the tests wouldn't run. Like they would all just start failing because there was literally no resources to do anything. And then I would look and I'm like, well, why the hell are there like 100 Docker containers trying to grind away? So sorry. So the way that you could approach that is like, if it were all in the same process, the tests running, then I could easily go add some rate limiting, some concurrency limitations, and it would be fine. Nothing to worry about. But it's not. It's across processes, and I don't actually know if it's across processes or app domains. But even in C#, I can't use a static variable, which I don't like doing, but would be shared across. It's not. So I can't do that. So what's currently an issue is, and it's not an issue right now, but it will become one, is if I run all of the tests sequentially, no problem. It's slower because they're running sequentially, but I don't have this issue of like too many containers being stood up and executed. But as that scales, when I go to run them in parallel, I don't yet have a way to limit the concurrency, and that'll be an interesting problem to solve. So that's one thing that's kind of on my mind. It's a kind of a low priority, but it's a burning question for me, because I'm like, I haven't answered this before. And then the other thing is that we use Aspire, and I think a few of us in the group, like, we're very new to Aspire, so we don't yet understand all the ways that it can help us. And the tricky thing is, like, I'm very confident there must be a way that we can use Aspire with our testing and, like, standing up local resources, but I don't know what that is. So right now it's just Testcontainers, but I feel like I'm missing something with Aspire. And sorry, I'm coming up on the convention center that I have to meet my wife, and I have no idea where I'm going, so I'm going to be editing this part out so I can have a continuous video clip. But mental note for me is I'm talking about Aspire. I think this way. Let's go this way. Okay. So yeah, we have Aspire, but we're probably not using Aspire in all the awesome ways that we can use Aspire. So it's still like TBD on that, because I'm pretty confident that instead of using Testcontainers the way that I am, or maybe Testcontainers with Aspire or something, that there's a way to get this working more effectively. Maybe that just bypasses the entire weird problem that I'm facing with the concurrency. But anyway, we'll cross that bridge later. It's one of those things that's like, personally, I'm very interested and curious about how that's going to work, but it's not really limiting us or affecting us in any way. You got to find enjoyment along the way, right? Like, some of these things they're interesting problems to solve for different ways, and for me, that's kind of like leveling up my ability to functionally test .NET applications, is like understanding that a little bit better. So that's why I'm very interested in seeing how that'll pan out. Okay, so in particular, like, what am I looking at now? And it is going to be a lot of functional tests exercising the database. And I started some things off with, like, so for folks that are watching, I don't know, like, obviously I don't know your backgrounds, but there's a lot of people that are .NET developers that watch my stuff, at least on my main channel. On this, I have literally no idea, but one of the really popular ORMs, object relational mappers, that's in .NET is called Entity Framework, the Entity Framework Core. And I'm not a fan of it, not because I think it's bad. I think it's probably the best thing, like, just probably is. But I find from usability, like, I always feel like I'm fighting it, and it just means I need to spend more time with it. I've talked about this many times before. I don't like saying I don't use Entity Framework because I think it sucks. I think it's a me problem. It's a skill issue on my end, so that's just how it is. But I like using a framework called Dapper, and Dapper for me is, like, I like writing my SQL queries manually. Like, I like seeing them. I like being able to tune them. You can do that in Entity Framework Core now, so it's not like I have an excuse. But I think there's some things around the data context and stuff, like, there's a little bit too much magic, or at least too much thought process, that I keep finding myself screwing up with Entity Framework Core. I'm sorry, I'm coughing. I can't control it. Now, I have a lot of like repository design patterns in the code base, and they wrap a lot of the Dapper code. So basically it's a layer that will look like, from the outside, you don't know it's anything to do with a database or like which database implementation, and then inside it's like SQL queries and Dapper to be able to go between object types. And that's just like how I've written code for a very long time. It's very comfortable for me, very familiar. Not here to say it's the best or the worst or whatever, just it's familiar, it's how I can be effective. So there's a bunch of that code, and really what I need to be able to do now is just like make sure a lot of that is rock solid. And the other thing is that like I can test, this is kind of where I'm going with this, like the feature development, is I can test schema changes locally instead of trying to go change the schema in prod and being like, okay, like I don't even know if I want to deliver this feature yet. I need to experiment with it, but how do I change the schema to not break things? At least in like locally, I can go do whatever I want now. I can totally obliterate everything and just see if I can get it working. And that will allow me, going back to what I said earlier, that will actually allow me to operate more quickly instead of spending so much time up front on something I don't even know if I need to go push forward on. Like I need to prototype it first. I can get to development way faster, to answering questions about the feasibility of it. That doesn't remove the problem of like, how do I migrate? That will still be a problem, but I might not even need to answer that question unless I have it working. So I think I'm kind of looking forward to that and being able to iterate. So to give you one example, it's a pretty simple one. There's been a couple of features. Big shout out to Ryan Murphy again for the feedback. Ryan's asked for a couple of things, and it's funny. Like I we love the feedback. It doesn't matter if it's critical or if it's just feature requests and stuff. But Ryan, he's I really appreciate this, where it's like, hey, like sorry for, it's very Canadian of him, but not trying to be picky, like not trying to bother anyone, but here's some feedback. Like for us, it's like we don't care. we just want the feedback. It's helpful. So Brian's asked for a couple things that, interestingly enough, when I was literally first putting together Brand Ghost, and for context, Brand Ghost started with just the back end server, because I was using other tooling to be able to call my server to start doing the posts and things like that. So when I was designing the scheduling, so I had the posting part working, at least for myself, for a lot of things. When I was building the scheduling out, I was building it like basically with a lot of extensibility and flexibility in mind, because I was trying to mirror what I was already doing, if that makes sense. But as I was building it, I was like, I don't know, man, like I feel like this is an opportunity that I can actually like simplify things. Like I was just trying to put in a lot of complexity, and it was like catching myself going, I don't think I actually need this. But it's funny because a couple of feature requests from Ryan are actually some of these things that I literally coded into the schema originally. And I need to make sure my front door is unlocked. We have cleaners coming, and I locked the front door. Good thing our Nest tells us. Oops. Okay. So I had already coded these things into the original schema and then kind of backed them out, but I was curious because when he was asking, I'm like, I wonder if it still works. Like, I'm not using it, but I wonder if it still works. And sure enough, there's at least one of the things. So the one I wanted to give you was like scheduling a topic stream to post multiple times in a day. That literally works in the schema currently. we don't have a user experience to like get you to set it up that way. But if I change it in the database, I was able to write tests that set things up that way in the data, and then exercise the code on it, and it truly does know how to schedule the things multiple times in a day. So it's kind of funny because I would have been nervous to go mess around with that in production and then be like, I don't know if it's going to work or if it's going to, cause the query to crash or something when it's trying to go figure out what to schedule. So just an interesting example of like how I was able to take this feature request and it all works. I'm just checking again my front door. I think they're a little early, but I think they usually start at 9 and it's still like 20 to 9, so that's okay. But it's unlocked. So that's one feature. Now he has a couple others, and again, like things that I know that I literally put into the schema and physically removed from the schema because I was like, no, it's going to be way too complicated for me to wrap my head around now. But they're valid use cases, and like I said, I tried to design originally for that type of flexibility. So now what's cool is I can mess around locally and just say like, okay, if I need the schema to look like this, let me try it. Let me try. So the next example is like, if you have a set schedule for your topic streams, and for context, a topic stream will post at a regular interval on the days you want. It's kind of like a weekly schedule, okay? And you pick the social media platforms that you want your content to go out at these times on these days, but the platforms are consistent across every point. So if you make a topic stream and you set it to have 3 of your social media accounts, every time that topic stream posts, it will always be those 3 social media accounts. If you want other ones, other configurations, you just make a new topic stream. But his ask was like, look, I just want to set up one and then configure within the topic stream, I want like one of the social media accounts to post like at a different interval or only on some days. So it's like, it's less spammy of that type of content on this platform. And on some other platform, because of the type of content that's more acceptable or the style of content, like we can post more frequently there. And that's totally valid. I've solved this myself by manually dividing up my content into different streams. And then it's not an issue. But that's just me. So if that doesn't work well for Ryan or other people, then like we should think that through. So that means that my schema for how I store your schedule needs to change, and it needs to include the social account. Like I need to know that this schedule is specifically for this social account on this topic stream. And that's going to make things kind of interesting. My goodness. And like there's a weird usability thing here. And the example I want to give you is this. So it's going to be hard to show without a picture, but let's pretend you have 3 pieces of content, okay? Sorry for coughing. You have 3 pieces of content, and you have a topic stream with 2 social accounts. You want to change the schedule across those social accounts. So social account 1 will post twice per week, and social account 2 will only post once per week. Now, if we think about the 3 pieces of content and we think about how a week progresses, it's a pretty simple scenario. Social media account 1 will post, content A, then content B on, 2 different days. And the social media account 2 will only get through posting 1 piece of content. Now, depending on if social media account 2 2 is posting on the first or the second day. Which piece of content should it post? So it might already sound confusing, but should it be posting the same and this is what I think it should probably do. Should it post the same content that everyone else is posting that day, every other social account? Or should it post the next one that it hasn't posted? Right? So does it uniquely have to track which piece of content it has posted or not? Or does it take the global state of the topic stream, and even if, the other accounts have posted stuff, it will just skip over them because it will stay consistent now? And I can see arguments for both cases, because if you're only posting what the other social accounts are posting for that topic stream, depending how much content you have, you're missing exposure of that content on that platform, right? So by the time it goes to repeat, you've basically missed a ton of content that could have been posted there. The counter argument is like, okay, but if it's not, then it's like kind of weirdly inconsistent when you're posting, and maybe that's what you want, though. Like, I don't know. So it's not that trivial, even outside of like the schema perspective, like truly from a usability kind of thing. Like, I don't know what people are expecting there. So kind of weird. I don't know what he has in mind for that, or if he's kind of thought through that yet. I know for myself, I actually do something kind of like this with TikTok and my shorts. So I post 3 short videos a day to TikTok, and it will go through content much faster. So my TikTok schedule is completely out of sync with my other short form video content, and that's been okay for me. That works well, but I don't know if I want that on my other social platforms. And if that has to be a configurable option, that's going to be extremely complicated from like a global scheduling perspective. So anyway, that feature it's going to be very complicated. There's ways to simplify the implementation, but the user experience for that, I think, is going to be far more complex than is originally thought. Like, it seems kind of simple on the surface, but I don't think it's quite as obvious. So that'll be an interesting one to solve, because I see the value in it, but we have to prioritize usability, and if it's too confusing, we can't put it in. We have to find ways to make it not confusing. So that's been our experience in the past. Like, when things are confusing, people just get frustrated and then they don't use them, or they try using it and it's not as expected, and then they're again frustrated. So we will figure it out. But I'm home, and that is not quite a commute, but that's the code commute for today. So take care.